I think we should start off just describing the sort of how you got into journalism, and what the sort of genesis was of getting you into an investigative role in the Indian journalism.
Yes, I mean, I've spoken about this to Richard when we were making the film. So in India, we had one of the worst possible carnages against Muslims, the anti-Muslim riots of 2002. And I was around 9-year-old then in a cosmopolitan city like Bombay. We were the only Muslim family in a predominantly Hindu locality. And that night, there was a plan to abduct me and my sister. I was just about 9 years old. I couldn't do anything back then. I was a scared kid. I went to a girls' school, a girls' degree college, a girls' post-grad college because we lived in a culture of fear. When I was around 19, the Gujarat riots happened in 2002, and I went there as a relief worker. And what I could not do and save people back then when I was 9 during the Bombay riots, I wanted to do that in 2002. I saw the suffering. I saw 1,000 Muslim lives taken away while Narendra Modi, who's now the Prime Minister of India, who was back then the Chief Minister, was literally meters away and he did not stop it. So I decided to become a journalist right then. A couple of gigs in television before I landed this assignment at Tehelka, which is one of India's leading investigative journalism portals. And I did a couple of investigations there. I was pretty young. At the age of 26, I got the first serving Home Minister of India behind bars. Ironically, that man is now the president of the ruling party. But I'm sure South Africans will know exactly what that means. Yeah.
Well, he went to jail.
He went to jail. And of course, after that, he made sure that my life was miserable. I changed about 250 odd SIM cards in a span of 1 year. Phone calls, messages. My life was not the same since the time I've been 26. I came back to Tehelka, my organization, and should I talk about the investigation?
Well, yeah, I think one of the things I want to stop you here with and talk about is because you became famous or infamous for being part of a cadre of Indian journalists who engage in sting operations. Now, here in South Africa, we don't do that. Unfortunately, we should. We should, I don't know, attach cameras to ourselves and run into Luthuli House and take some pictures. I think it would be fun. But we don't do that here. There's no tradition of that. Speak to us a little bit about sting operations. And one of the things we spoke about a lot when we were making the movie was what are the ethics of sting operations? Because here I get the sense that South Africans would be very uncomfortable with the kind of stuff that we saw up there.
I mean, I'm not really a fangirl of sting operations. I do believe there is a sense of ethics. I think it's slightly unethical because back home in India, it's used willy-nilly for almost every investigation. It's a form of lazy journalism. But what I was dealing with is perhaps the most influential, powerful man in India. Narendra Modi is now the Prime Minister of 1.2 billion. There are people ready to kill for him. The officials working under him, the bureaucrats working under him, the ministers working under him refused to speak. Even those who thought that what he had done in his tenure as a provincial minister did not really want to speak out. The only option that was left with me was to go undercover. So I wore about 7 to 8 odd cameras on my body, one in my earring, one in my watch, one in my keychain. I had a Kashmiri kurta, so it was with intricate embroidery. So I had, a couple of cameras here. It's the toughest thing that you can perhaps do in an investigation because you have to constantly, while you are speaking to these people, some of the most powerful people, you have to also constantly look at the camera and the camera position. And sometimes you have to take a break, sometimes you have to, it's a very difficult exercise. And here I was dealing with some of the most powerful people who were shrewd, who knew how to dodge questions. So I went around because I knew the people were majoritarian, Hindu right-wing, Hindu nationalists. So I posed as this American filmmaker. And in Gujarat, anybody who speaks with an American accent, you get easy access. So I got a fake American accent. I pretended to be a student of the American Film Institute Conservatory. I got a fake passport. fake identity cards, and with those cameras, I went undercover for about 8 months. I did not speak to my family for a period of 8 months. I mean, sting operation is perhaps something I would not recommend to anyone because it's a huge psychological trauma. You live somebody else's life for 8 months, you live like that bigot, because I was this bigot who did not like the idea of minorities, Muslims staying on my land. So to be that bigot and to see yourself as that bigot in the mirror every day and to live that life and not think of yourself as this Muslim girl, and that is a tough act to pull. And when there are people who are speaking that language, that Muslims should be burnt alive, the ministers who say that, oh, Muslims should be burnt alive, they don't know right to live, and then you're like, oh, really, of course. That is something that, that act that you put on, that's really important. It's not something that I would recommend to anyone because I used to...
Let's speak about the psychology of going into your ideological and religious opposite. I mean, that's who you became.
Yeah.
Right? And you told me that you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, yes, because as a journalist, I was trying to scrape through the truth every time and nothing would come of it. And here, these were people who identified with me that, she is somebody we can relate to, who are speaking the truth in front of me every day. I also enjoyed it because I was this very shy girl who had responsibilities. I was born with the polio of my left hand and my right leg. I was born a cripple. So I had this huge inferiority complex. I lived a life wherein I'd seen multiple riots, nervous breakdowns, an accident early on in my life. The sting operation was in many ways liberating. It made me realize my own worth for the first time. And it made me...
But it's interesting that worth was generated within the fake identity of a of a Hindu woman who literally had the whole of Gujarat open to her.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you walked in, and here's the thing. The sting operation is very interesting because you started at the bottom of Gujarati society or
Right.
power,
Right.
and you walked all the way to the top, right? Rana got an interview with Narendra Modi.
Yeah, so we started speaking to the filmmakers in Gujarat just to let people know that we are these chilled out filmmakers. We have nothing serious, we have no serious business. So I went around telling everybody that we are shooting the development story of Gujarat, that Narendra Modi is a man America loves for the kind of development work that he is doing. So we went around shooting with the filmmakers in Gujarat, the item numbers, the routine, Bollywood song and dance. So 1 month we just shot the Bollywood song and dance. And then we started meeting these families. We started with this women and child welfare minister who is also a gynecologist. So, I played the woman card and, spoke to her for a month and started scraping the surface, met the foot soldiers, and one led to the other. The women and child welfare minister led me to the commissioner of police. The commissioner of police led me to the deputy director general of police. He led me to the home minister. The home minister led me to the chief minister, who's now the prime minister of India.
Which is just, it's just remarkable. I mean, that power works in that way, right? You just zigzag up if you present yourself correctly.
Of course, I had this clipped American accent. They were obsessed with that American accent. So I think that is an easy way. Also, I had these two interns who were at that point of time, part of a student exchange program. They had come from Paris. So they became my assistant directors. And they were very good at it. So, they had cameras on them. And so, of course, they saw these two foreign faces, two white faces with me. And they said, oh, she's an authentic filmmaker. And there it started. And we reached right up to Narendra Modi, who was then the chief minister of Gujarat. And the day I went to see him, there was a book of Barack Obama on the table. And he saw me, he thought I was an American. So he pointed to the book on the table and said, one day I want to be like that man. And look at him. He is now the prime minister of 1.2 billion population in India. So,
well, he shook Obama's hand in Madison Square Gardens.
Absolutely.
In front of 60,000 people.
Right.
Right? He literally became Obama.
Yes.
I mean, there were posters that were done up in the style of the Hope and Change posters. How did this guy manage to launder his reputation, to keep at bay the very clear evidence that tied him, A, to the Gujarat massacres, and B, to a virulent strain of populist, ethnic-based religious nationalism which has become, as we say in the little teaser, the norm?
When I went to Gujarat in 2002, way back, I was a relief worker when I went there. I was only 19. And what we saw, so I used to go around sporting a bindi at that point of time, way back. And, we used to walk into the relief camps. There were women with 4 children, all raped in relief camps, and they would beg for help. I've seen that. I've seen people, when you walk on the road as filmmakers, asking for your identity. So my camera person way back when I was 19 told them that he was a Muslim name. They dragged him. And there's this hostility in Gujarat where Mr. Modi belongs to Muslims, the very idea of Muslims. And Mr. Modi has capitalized on that idea. In 2002, when the riots happened, he said Muslims are child-producing factories. And he said perhaps the most provocative stuff as the chief minister. And in the interview that you see, he removes the mic. That was the only interview that man of the world's largest democracy has given in his lifetime. In the last 4 years, he has not given a single interview to any media person. He has not taken a single press conference, but when he goes to America, he goes to these big countries, he talks about democratic values. He was in South Africa just about 3 weeks ago for the BRICS summit, and last year too, he was in South Africa. In South Africa, he spoke the language of communal harmony. He gave South Africans the example of Muhammad Kachalia, who was a freedom fighter in South Africa. But back home in India, he does not take any Muslim names. Muslim names are only when he goes abroad, and he wants to win the sympathy of an international audience in talking about communal harmony. He invokes Gandhi in India, on international soil, but back home in India, his followers invoke the name of those who assassinated Gandhi, Nathuram Godse. So that's the dichotomy of Narendra Modi, and that's what we wanted to expose.
But why do you feel it's been so easy for international audiences, for people here in South Africa, or at least for leaderships here in South Africa, to swallow this bullshit? Excuse me, John. Why has it been so easy? Why do we swallow this stuff? This development nonsense.
I think he has this terrific facade that he wears of this leader who speaks the language of development, and people buy that language. That's the reason why I had to go undercover, because as a journalist too, I could not scratch the surface. The only time that I could scratch the surface of this man, who is known as a bigot, who is known as a mass murderer. The Supreme Court of India called him a modern-day Nero who looked the other way when women and children were burnt alive. I think the world buys the Modi success story. He goes to America, he goes to London, people buy the Modi success story because he has this massive PR campaign, in India. He spends billions every year on just his PR campaign, on his image management. His PR gurus tell us that he changes his costumes 4 times a day. So that's Narendra Modi. I think he spends more time on his own development than the development of the country.
Switching gears for a second, all of a sudden, journalists, people in the media, are the scum of the earth. Over the course of the last 5 years, I've definitely felt a shift on the ground in South Africa. A lot of that had to do with the economic freedom fighters declaring war against ANN7, which we had to physically step in front of people at rallies in order to make sure that journalists weren't hurt. There have been other instances here in this country as well. But as bad as it's been here, you in particular, but other Indian journalists as well, Kashmiri journalists, have had it much, much worse. Speak a little bit about the genesis of the war against journalism in India, and talk a bit about how that war has been prosecuted.
Washington Post did a story about 3 years ago on the girl India loves to hate, that is me. And that's what Modi has done, and that's similar to what, say, Putin is doing in Russia, what Duterte is doing in Philippines, is make journalists your enemy, because these are the people who are the only hurdles in your way to present this facade that you present to the world. I remember when I went undercover in Gujarat, when I came back with the investigation, for 8 months I was undercover. Despite several nervous breakdowns, when I came back to my organization, Tehelka, they refused to publish the investigation, citing political pressure. I mean, that's the worst thing you can do to a journalist who has gone undercover for 8 months, suffered perhaps the worst possible mental trauma. And I came back, and there was pressure. Narendra Modi government got to know that there was a sting. They pressurized my organization. My organization refused to publish that investigation. 1 year later, I went to one of the biggest publishers in India, and I said that I want to convert this sting operation tapes into a book. I had a contract with them in 2013. In 2014, just about a month ago, when Narendra Modi was supposed to assume power, the publishers stopped taking my calls. 2 months later, I wrote them an email saying I'm easing out of the contract, that's the only time to reply to my email. In 2015, again, I was jobless, of course. In 2013, I quit Tehelka because they had refused to publish my stuff. And my editor, who was one of the most iconic investigative journalists, was caught in a sexual harassment scandal. I had to quit the organization. All those who wanted to hire me as editor looked the other way. Nobody wanted to be seen with me in public because being seen with me in public was telling Narendra Modi that we are her friends. I was literally friendless. In 2016, I went to another big publication in India, showed them the transcript. They said it's perhaps the best work of investigative journalism, and we'd like to do that as a book. 5 months later, they eased out of the contract. Finally, in 2016 May, I realized that I had a big obligation to the truth. I had some gold which my mom had kept for my wedding. I pawned that gold, took a gold loan, and published all the transcripts in the form of a book called Gujarat Files. There was a massive audience which had gathered to hear me in India, in Delhi, which was almost every possible editor, every possible publisher, every possible politician worth a salt. They were all sitting in a hall, packed hall, and they gave me a standing ovation saying, this is the bravest thing Indian journalism has ever done. So I thought, okay, next day, the headlines of every newspaper is going to be this book. Not one line in the newspapers the next day. That's the state of journalism, because I had been made the new enemy in India. One, I was a Muslim. I was a part of an organization called Tehelka, which had this reputation of being anti-government. And of course, I went undercover. So of course, I was a new enemy in India.
A democracy of 1.3 now, 1.3 billion people. Is there freedom of speech in India?
I've been jobless for about 6 years now. So if that says something about freedom of speech, I think perhaps it is easily the best and the worst time to be a journalist in India. Best time, that's not always you get to work under autocrats. Worst because, well, you have to pay your EMIs and your loans, and you have to do odd jobs to pay them. So that's perhaps. But some of the best journalists in India right now are all consulting editors. That says something about what the state of press freedom is in India. Nobody has a job. None of them are editors. None of them are employed by the organizations. They're all consultants. So I think that speaks volumes of the press freedom in India. Earlier this year, I was at an award function in Delhi, in the national capital, and I spoke about Gujarat Files, my book being converted into a film. And the next day, there was a pornographic video of me. My image morphed in a pornographic video and sent to almost every phone in India. And the United Nations had to intervene to ask for my safety from the Indian government. It's been 3 months, the Indian government has not intervened.
That video was traced back to the ruling party of India. So imagine the ANC was disseminating porn videos, fake porn videos of journalists in this country. That's the exact equivalent of what happened to Rana.
I mean, perhaps that was, I guess that's a price you pay for the journalism that you wanted to do, but that certainly was not a price I was ready to pay at that point of time. I mean, that came as a shock, because imagine stepping out of the house and everybody asking, oh, we saw your video. I mean, how many people do you kind of explain that this is not you on the video? They trace the original video, they trace the original pornography, but in India, it's a patriarchal country where a great virtue is placed on a woman's character. They tried to finish me off in a day. This was just about 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. 6 UN special rapporteurs wrote to the Indian government that this is not justified. Nothing can justify this act. The Indian government is yet to send them a response. I'm fighting a case, but I'm doing this because I believe that one day history will be kind and objective to the kind of journalism that we are doing.
You have a family, you have parents. Absolutely. You have a family, you have parents, you have 2 brothers. Tell us about what this has cost you guys as a family to go up against these people.
So my younger brother, who has 3 children, he lost his job last year because his manager got to know that he is my brother. Um, um, it's not easy living my life right now in India. But I remember when my parents have been my strength. My family has been my biggest strength. I remember when this pornographic video came about, and it came on my father's phone too. And I wrote in the New York Times about this ordeal. And he came to my room and he said, even if it was an original video, we didn't bat an eyelid. And they have been perhaps my strongest, my support system. If not for them, I don't know what would I be doing. I mean, when I was undercover for 8 months, they had no idea what I was doing. My father does get threat calls. So just before this porn video was released this year, an intelligence official, he came to me. He's also a friend of mine. He came to me with a 31-page dossier. So the dossier had, there were 3 pages dedicated to each family member of mine. So about me, when was the last purchase, how many flights did I take in a year, if I flew from, so I had a flight to Johannesburg last year. So Mumbai, Dubai, business class, Dubai, Johannesburg, business class, ordered vegan meal on flight. Sister got a gold chain for 20,000 rupees. Father goes for morning walk at 7 in the morning. Niece goes to Reliance International School. A 31-page dossier about every activity of me and my family member, my nieces, my nephews, everything is being recorded. So this intelligence official who works with the Modi government, he comes to me and says, why don't you have some money in your account? And I didn't for a second I was taken aback. He was trying to tell me that we are keeping a tab on your bank account. So that's the level of surveillance that is inflicted on me. I do not talk on my phone because I know every call that I make is tabbed. I started relying on Signal and WhatsApp, but I'm sure nothing is of help. Last year, one of India's leading journalists, Gauri Lankesh, was killed, and it was a big story. 15 days before Gauri Lankesh was killed, she translated my book in a regional language, and she was killed 15 days later. So that's the state of free press and the state of journalism in India.
Given the toll on your mental health and your physical health, given the toll on your family, would you do this again?
Of course. I don't know if there's anything else that I can do besides this. And when these death threats started coming in and the government offered me a license for a revolver because they couldn't provide me security, and they said, why don't you leave the country for some time? And a lot of people have been recommending that I leave the country for some time, but that's what the government wants. They want to see me broken. They want me to leave the country, but I do not want to give them the satisfaction that they have intimidated me and they have made me leave the country. And this is the time when my country needs me the most.
I am terrified at the thought of you with a gun. The state of Indian democracy, and I think we'll blow this up globally as well. How bullish are you? How bearish are you?
The state of Indian democracy right now? I take pride in the Indian democracy. It's just that I don't take pride in the people who are meant to protect the Indian democracy. Indian democracy is beautiful. It allows each one of us the right to vote, the right to express our sentiment, whether we are Hindus, Muslims. But just before I was coming here, I wrote a column on being Muslim in India. Being Muslim in India means in the last 6 months alone, India has witnessed 36 lynching of Muslims. And these lynchings are on the allegation that Muslims eat beef. So every second day on your television set, you see a Muslim man being lynched with his beard pulled, saying that you cow eaters, we need to show you your place. So that's how Indian democracy is at this point of time. I don't know what Modi did in Gujarat. It's the past, of course, we are still remembering it. But what he is doing to the Indian democracy right now, the democracy that was harbored and nurtured by Gandhi and Nehru in India during our freedom struggle in 1947, it's being destroyed systematically every day. And that's where the Indian democracy stands. When you're not allowed to speak your mind, when you are being killed for your dietary habits, when you're being killed for eating beef, when you're not allowed to offer namaz in public space, when you are called names. I mean, I know one of the reasons why I'm being called out by the government every day. I mean, one of the famous words for me on social media is a jihadist because I have a Muslim name. So that's where Indian democracy is right now.
Why do you believe our democratic institutions have been so poorly insulated against this rise of ethnic nationalism, against this rise of crude populism all over the world?
I guess we need to ask these questions of ourselves. Why are we electing people like Narendra Modi to power? I think we need to look inwards. The question does not lie and the answer does not lie with democratic institutions. The fact that despite the fact Narendra Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat when 1,000 Muslims were killed, he gave provocative speeches every day, that the Indian population brought him to power with an absolute majority. I think it speaks more of the Indian population than of the democratic institutions. That we elected a bigot to power, it speaks for us that somewhere we have lost our moral compass as citizens of the country. The people who elect Putin, the people who elect Trump, these are the people who need to answer those questions, not the institutions.
Obviously, I mean, you know, we can pat ourselves on the back as much as we want, and I suppose this is a form of back-patting exercise. Do you feel the press is still a bulwark against these monsters? And they are monsters, there's no question.
The fact that I am here speaking to South Africa about the reality of India and the Prime Minister of India speaks that we are still the bulwarks for what's happening, for the tyranny of power in our democratic institutions. Certainly the press has a more important role now more than ever. We still will continue to be bulwarks against hate, against tyranny, against violence, against corruption, and South Africa should know this more than anyone else. I mean, you have had the Gupta brothers. Of course, I have nothing to do with the Gupta brothers. I'm Indian, but I have nothing to do with them. But we made you proud. But it was a journalistic endeavor that led to the downfall of the Gupta brothers and Zuma and exposed their corruption. So you really cannot take the power of journalism. Still, I mean, despite the fact that every day we are being made the new enemy, we still have it in us to bring power and the powerful to account.
I would like to open this up to the floor. I'm sure there are people out there who would like to ask some questions. So I should have asked somebody how this works. I guess just yell if you have a question. Anyone?
Yeah, I see your hand.
Would you see any similarity between the populism here of white and black and Muslim versus Hindu?
I do. And not just here, but everywhere where there is racism. I mean, what India is witnessing is we are not stranger to this. It's a pattern that is followed everywhere. This white nationalism that you see in America is the same where the Hindu nationalists think that it is their land and why are Muslims a part of us? We gave you Pakistan, so why are you still here? So that's what American white nationalists think, and white nationalists everywhere think about. This is our land. This is rightfully our land. What are you doing here on our land? Not realizing that we, or the blacks here, or we Muslims back home, have contributed equally, whether it was to the freedom struggle or to the development of that part of land.
Thank you very much. I mean, I've got a white piece of paper here, but I'm actually pink, and I'm of Khoi descent. And Mr. Manya is my brother, my cousin, whoever, and so are you. So how do we together as an audience, I mean, we're not journalists, many of us. What advice would you give us to bring that family together?
You mean advice? I just listen to your conscience. I think each one of us, if we start listening to conscience, we don't have a Zuma or a Modi or a Trump anywhere. I think we stop listening to our own conscience.
Thank you very much.
There's somebody at the back.
Sorry, hang on a sec, guys. Just one sec. give it a try.
Arundhati Roy is also in Cape Town at the moment. I just wondered if you are friends and if she offers you support.
Well, when I launched my book Gujarat Files, Arundhati Roy was the first person to enter the hall. So I do certainly have a support. And I did hear bits of her speech where she said the life of a cow in India is more important than the life of a Muslim, which is absolutely true. We have memes now on WhatsApp that how a cow's life is more important than a Muslim life. There was a lynching last year. I'll give you a small example. There was a lynching last year in India of a man who was alleged to have consumed beef. The cops entered. They did not arrest the accused. They went and checked his fridge to check if it was mutton or beef. That's the value of a Muslim life in India. One of our union cabinet minister, the civil aviation minister in India, recently garlanded 8 men who were accused of lynching Muslims. So that's what it means to be a Muslim in India right now. And there are people like Arundhati Roy, there are few people. I mean, Arundhati has been declared an anti-national in the country. I think that's something she should wear as a badge of honor.
Thank you for your story. There are no words to express my admiration for your courageousness. And if my 8-year-old daughter were to grow up to be like you, I've done my job. I do just want to say that the terror that I feel for your story, that the truth needs defenders like you, and if I may, as a mother, to make sure that you live, because there are countless other stories that needs defenders of truth like you. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's a quick question, maybe wrongly timed because it needs an elaborate answer. But do you think that nationalism and jingoism are synonyms?
Nationalism and what, mate?
Nationalism and jingoism, or chauvinism, or Modiism, or things of that ilk. Or is there such a thing as benign nationalism?
Well, certainly, because in India, every time we have an economic crisis, Mr. Modi reminds us of the army men serving at the border and invokes nationalistic pride and the flight of the flag. So every time there's a big crisis, and every time Mr. Modi talks about the national flag and patriotism, we know there's an economic crisis brewing somewhere. So, nationalism and jingoism and patriotism now is being used to cover the acts of tyranny by these autocrats everywhere.
We should all burn our flags. The sooner the better.
Get rid of all borders.
Say again?
Get rid of all borders.
Next up. Sorry guys, if I look like I'm a bit deaf, I'm having a bit of trouble hearing you guys off the mic, so just try to speak as clearly as possible.
Rana, thank you so much for sharing your story. What is it like being a woman in India today? Much like here in South Africa, it seems that women there are living in a crippling fear.
Well, Reuters came out with a report about 2 months ago that India is the most unsafe place for women. Yes, we have seen some of the worst possible rapes in India this year, in Kashmir, which is perhaps an insurgency-ridden part of India. An 8-year-old Muslim girl was raped. She belonged to a peasant family. And when the cops arrested the accused, some of them belonged to the mainstream party, there was a rally that people took out to favor the accused, and each one of them had a national flag with them to protect the accused of the 8-year-old girl. That woman was raped, sedated, abducted for 8 days, and she was raped repeatedly over a period of 8 days. And instead of the country coming together to get justice for the victim, they all rallied with the national flag to protect the accused, and some of them were ministers in the ruling dispensation. That said, the fact that they could not defeat me with tapping my calls, death threats, that they had to make a pornographic video, with my image mobbed in it, says what they think about women. That, okay, the only way we can attack her is through her character. Because the only way you attack a woman is to make her a free-for-all for the country, and that's exactly what they think of women. I have never really seen myself as a woman journalist. I've only seen myself as a journalist. But yes, it opens me to the most sexist, misogynist abuse that I face on social media. I mean, almost every 10th tweet that comes to me on social media is my image morphed on a naked body. So yes, that's the price you have to pay for being a woman in India right now.
When I see a tweet that's tagged to me from you, I'm like, oh God, now I'm in for 2 days of abuse as well. I mean, just the trail of abuse that comes with being
I tried
Rana
this experiment once. I just put a dot on my tweet one day, just one full stop. And there were 2,000 replies to that. Jihadi, go back home. And I'm like, so basically these are paid people. They don't care about my opinion. They just paid to do that, just paid to intimidate me. Just paid to silence me, that how much, let's see what's our level of endurance. But I guess I don't know that I have a thicker skin than them.
Well, I mean, we've had the displeasure in putting together this project so far of going through the cache of documents that have been compiled against you. The social media, the sexual violence that has been directed at you is staggering.
It is. I mean, at one point when the pornographic video was released, I was sitting at a restaurant when it first came to me on my phone. It was somebody from the ruling party who was my source. He sent it to me saying, I'm sending you something, but please don't be disturbed. You are a brave girl. I might be on the opposite side of the ideological spectrum, but I still laud you for your bravado. And I saw that on my phone. I could not see that beyond the third frame. And I'm sure nobody can. It's still on my phone because the investigating agencies need to have that on my phone for forensic records. And I cringe every time I see it. The day it happened, when I first saw it, I vomited in the restaurant where I was. I had palpitations, anxiety attacks. I was taken to a hospital. My blood pressure was monitored for 2 days in the hospital. They did get to me. I mean, I won't lie that it didn't get to me. Of course they did get to me. And the third day I did think about leaving journalism and leaving everything. And I cried in front of my father that what have I done to deserve this? I called up my lawyer and I said, she's this big human rights lawyer, and I called and I said, what exactly have I done to deserve this? All I'm trying to do is tell the people of this country what they need to know. I have been jobless for the last 5 to 6 years. I don't have a salary, I don't have a steady income. But I do believe that the only way I can overcome my own weaknesses, that of being born a cripple, that of having been a weak child, because I was always referred to as the weak child in the family, because, we have the stigma of having a child who's a cripple. Oh, the weak child, oh, the weak child. I always wanted to overcome that bit by being strong enough. And for me, this was the purpose, to tell people what Modi is all about. I was losing this battle every day, but I still want to do it. I really don't know what will it take for the people of India to actually wake up. Pornographic video, perhaps my colleagues have lost their lives. One of my colleagues was shot at outside Parliament yesterday. I don't know what will really satisfy them.
We have time for a last question, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to follow up on what you were saying in terms of keeping that film on your phone for investigation picked my ears, because if the level of intimidation in India is as bad as you say it is, will the police actually investigate? Here in South Africa, we've got a similar situation where the police force is totally captured. You'll probably know we've had, I don't know how many Kashmirs the police caught, locked up and gone to jail, in fact. So we've got very little chance in South Africa of really anything being investigated by the police if it's going to put the ruling party in a bad light. In India, is it a similar situation? Thank you.
I didn't get the question.
Will the police investigate?
Will the police investigate? Well, I have recorded my statement. It's been 2.5 months and I haven't heard from them yet. They have not been able to nab a single suspect. They have not been able to interrogate anyone yet. There is no will. I know it's just something that I had to do for official record, because tomorrow something was to happen to me. I don't want anyone to tell my family that, why didn't you alert the police? I did my job of alerting the police. It's just an official thing. I know nothing is going to come of it. I know keeping that porn video on my phone also will not help, and I'll have to live with it for some time, but I don't see justice for myself or for any other woman who's suffering this kind of sexual attack in India right now. Well,
that's a horrific way to end this panel. we're in the very early stages of making this film. We're in, I'd say, early development. I cannot wait to come to India to finish this project with you. I think we're going to have as much fun as we can. We had some very tense moments making this teaser. I think there are going to be many, many more tense moments. But I can't wait to get stuck into it with you. Remember, journalism has a cost. The cost is very clear when you're doing it at the extreme level that Rana has been engaged in. It's been a pleasure sitting up here with you. And
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you so much.
It was great.